Stay tuned because next up is David Charles Allen, Village Properties Realtor and host of the HOP, that's Home Ownership Podcast.
Welcome to HOP. This is David Charles Allen, Realtor at Village Properties in Santa Barbara, California, with my great friend and co-host, Patty Teal. I'm doing great today, Patty. How you doing?
I'm doing fine as well, David. Thank you.
And then in terms of real estate, we're at 6.25 for 30-year jumbo and 6.5 for 30-year conforming. So again, going slightly up, then slightly back down, and then slightly back up again. We're staying consistent between the sixes, but no huge change there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, no news is good news, as they say.
Yeah. And then in terms of how the statistics have performed, we got 26 new listings, 18 price changes, 29 that closed, 28 that went pending, 6 back on market, and 2 coming soon. So huge drop in new listings, almost half as much. And the pendings have stayed consistent, right about 28. So no buildup of the supply this week, but we're not seeing a huge change in more pendings as compared to the last week's, even though we just had a really short week in terms of new listings.
Yeah, isn't that funny how that would be so much lower than it was last week? Who knows why?
Yeah, and 18 price changes is huge too. So
yes, it is.
That's very relative of kind of how things are going. Some things are still trying to price it the way the market was moving, just up and up and up. And it seems to be kind of hitting a point where it's more neutral right now.
Right. Well, I guess for the average person, that's good news.
Yeah, I mean, we're always different than the rest of the country. I think the other parts of the country have experienced something a little bit different. But it always comes around to where we live, either before or after. We're usually happens before, and then it takes a little while to hit us too. So it all comes around the same, but it just hits in different parallels.
Yeah, I think you're right. And perhaps it never does hit as hard in Santa Barbara just because it's such a coveted area and there isn't much room for any new housing anyway.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's never going to be as dramatic as maybe somewhere where it's like a new city being built or something with a lot of supply where they're constantly able to build new construction and expand, like Denver and stuff like that. Or even like Las Vegas, where they can constantly go out and out and out and build more suburbs and stuff like that. We're pretty much destined for what we have here.
Okay.
Any questions of the day for me?
Well, David, I don't really have any specific questions. I was just going to ask, is the open house scene still very active in Santa Barbara, or is that just always a given that there are open houses to showcase?
There's always going to be open houses in Santa Barbara, so that's always a given. There's always going to be something to come see if you're just visiting from out of town. Just really depending, again, on the supply. If there's enough supply, there's going to be open houses. I know. For a while, houses were sold before you even get to go see an open house. So I think it's come back to like some people can come and see some open houses and maybe they have a little more time to make a decision. It's not as ruthless as before where you had to see it online and make an offer before you even saw it in person, or otherwise 4 other people were going to do it. So
Thank goodness.
Come back a little bit more stress-free, so to say. But it's definitely still an interesting market.
Yes, it is. And it's a good way when you're just beginning to even have the idea of buying a house to see about how much the cost of houses are in different areas.
Yeah, it's always fun. Like if you're really going and looking for a new house, it's always fun to just go check out some open houses and just see what's selling for what or what's marketed for what, and kind of go in and see what you like and what you don't like. So the more you see, the more you'll know when you see it, which one really appeals to you.
Right. And we've talked about etiquette before. If you are already working with a realtor, it's a good idea to let the person who's managing the open house know that.
Yeah, I mean, that's courteous of them. And some of the agents will still harass you, so to say, potentially. Yeah, if you just let them know right off the bat, that gives them the ability to maybe talk with somebody else that maybe doesn't have an agent they're working with and make that connection with them. But at the same time, if you have questions, you should definitely be asking them the questions you have, whether or not you have an agent or not. And that should be their responsibility to still take the time to answer that for you.
Yeah, thank you, David. So I was wondering how your fur babies are.
I mean, they're all doing really good. They're all really lazy because of the heat. So we try and take them to the beach and get in the water. Otherwise, they really basically just sleep all day, and we get ice packs out so they can lay around on
Oh,
them. Moose
oh,
doesn't do well in the heat just because he's a huge fur ball. So, and he's
right,
black.
right.
So it's like,
Yeah. Well, we took our dogs on the little trip that I mentioned earlier, and it's really almost more of a vacation for them. We do so pamper them. So they had a good time. I think they were a little depressed when the vacation came to an end, that they had to go back to their usual routine, but they're all good.
yeah, it's
So
funny how dogs just love to do those fun little adventures and see new places, and they
they
get so
do.
excited.
So excited. Yes, yes. They remind us that it doesn't take that much to have a lot of joy and excitement added to our lives.
It's funny. We took Bailey to all the dogs to like a new park the other day, and Bailey was just having the time of her life. Like, what is this place? Oh my god!
You've
Like,
been
what?
hiding this from me.
I know. It's just so funny how just like a little bit of a switch up gets them so excited.
Oh, yeah. So anyway, the weekend getaway was in honor of my oldest daughter's birthday. So I just have to tell you one story. I thought we were singing happy birthday to her, and both dogs, they just went running over to her. So I think we really don't give credit enough to our dogs. Maybe they didn't know it was her birthday, but they certainly knew we were singing to her and honoring her, and they were so excited. So it's just amazing, I think, how we underestimate our pups.
They're way more intuitive than we could ever know. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. People who listen regularly will remember that David is really an expert on dog nutrition. And in fact, he started a new business called Chowdies, which is dog treats that are organic, that are made from liver. So I thought I'd pick your brain a little bit, David, and ask you some questions about dog nutrition.
Yeah, go for it. I mean, I wouldn't clarify me as an expert in any regards, but I appreciate the compliment. I looked into a few things and just kind of realized what's going to work best for my dogs and what I want to feed them. And it's always going to be different from person to person. So do your own looking and kind of try new things out. And that's kind of the thing. My dogs could probably be eating what I'm eating and, cost a little bit more, but at the same time, it gives them more health in their later years and maybe less issues coming up then. It will be all worth it.
Absolutely. And of course, it depends if you have a little dog or a big dog or in between size. I know when I watched my grand dog, sometimes I realize he's a golden, that, oh my gosh, he eats so much. It's a lot different than like your little Bailey. They just eat really such a small amount of food, basically.
Yeah, so it was easy for me to do it for Bailey when I had her. But then now with the two big dogs, yeah, it's definitely a little bit harder, but it's still worth it in my opinion.
It is. Of course it is. Did I hear you say one time that the dogs are on a raw food diet, or is raw food just included in their diet?
So they're on purely raw food. Yes. So it's always going to be a switch over if you are feeding them regular food or cooked food or processed food. You don't want to do it all at once, but we did it and they love it ever since.
Wow. So basically, let's say it's hamburger or it's chicken or any other meat. You just cut up some pieces that are the right size for them, and that's their meal. You don't do anything else?
Yeah, you just take it out of the packaging, put it in a bowl, and voila. You don't have to do any cooking. There's no prep. It's actually very convenient in a sense. They love it and they have no issues from that, it seems like.
Yeah, I was always afraid that, like people, they might get salmonella from chicken or this or that, but that's not the case with dogs.
They just have a different system than we do. So they can handle a lot more of the toxins or any kind of microbes that are in the food. And that's just how they were built because they're essentially wild animals. So they have no option to cook on their own if they were.
Well, that's true when you think about it. Yeah, that's
so
what
it makes sense kind of thing.
It does.
They're built to eat raw food and it doesn't make really any sense to why it should be cooked. They would have no way of doing it themselves and nothing's made having to be dependent on something else. So that just wouldn't make sense.
That's so true, David. That's really so true. But I guess we're comparing it to us and our distaste generally for looking at or eating raw meat.
Yeah, exactly. Well, our intestines and our whole gut biomes, again, completely different from what a dog's is. So they're essentially able to withstand. They have a way shorter intestinal tract and everything like that. So It's something they can process. We don't have a worry from that as well. And you always wonder, like, you go on a walk with them and they'll drink out of the dirtiest puddle or whatever like that. And you drank out of that, you'd probably get a little sick or not feel very well. And they just doesn't bother them. They're just ready to go again. So
yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. And I know, though, one of the things that they usually don't get enough of in their diet is organ meats. And tell us how that led to you starting Chowdies.
Yeah, so a lot of the parts of the raw diet is you really want to incorporate bone or calcium as well as organ meats. So organ meats basically supply most of the nutrition in a raw food diet that they wouldn't get if they're just eating ground beef or something like that. And then the bones really add the density and the calcium, and that makes them have firmer stools and stuff like that. So they're not consistently runny. And then it's kind of like a balance between 80% meat and then about 10% organs, then 10% bone. And then you get those really perfect stools where they're consistently having a good digestion. By doing that, you're getting the full range of nutrients that they would get if they were eating prey or game animals in the wild. And that's kind of why we started Chowdies. Bailey wouldn't eat bones really or liver or organs raw, but she would eat it once we freeze dried it. So once we're able to freeze dry the liver, we're able to incorporate that as either a treat or a topper in all of her meals. And now she won't even eat her meals without it being sprinkled on. And that means she's getting all the nutrients from the liver that she wouldn't get from just eating the raw meat.
Don't you love it when our animals train us? So Bailey has trained you that she must have Chowdies on her meals.
Exactly. She must have it on her meals. The funny thing about the other dogs, too, is they always bark at everything that another dog that comes by and a loud truck. And, we've tried everything. They've never stopped. You be mean to them. You be nice to them. You tell them treat, blah, 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 blah. You put them in timeout. Nothing's ever worked. They still continuously do it. But what's interesting now is they'll bark once and then we'll say Chowdies and they'll stop. So, and then
right.
So it's very interesting how the Chowdies now has become the one way to get our dogs to start barking.
Well, I'm going to incorporate that because you just sent me some Chowdies, which I'm going to share with Ollie as soon as we get off the air today. But thank you, David. And if people are interested in getting Chowdies for their pet, and I was interested to learn also that even cats can eat Chowdies, but how would they order them?
It's just through our website, chowdies.com, CHOWDEES.
Chowdies.com. All right.
That's it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, David, I thank you so much. This was great information, both on real estate and on dog nutrition and why a raw diet is so good for our dogs. So thank you.
You're welcome. And yeah, just as kind of like why the nutrients are good in the liver as well. And in processed food and stuff like that, they add nutrients back that you'd normally get in the liver, but they're adding like synthetic ingredients or maybe like things that aren't naturally forming. They kind of create them themselves. So that's the difference between getting something from the store with all those nutrients in it and getting something that is actually the source of those nutrients. And that's kind of the difference of what we offer as well.
Oh, good to know. Well, I'm so glad you came up with it. And I think a lot of pets are very happy and healthier because of it. So thank you.
Yeah, glad to be there.
Okay.
Doing it for the animals, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
All right, Patty. Let's give it a go next week.
Okay, look forward to it. Bye, David.